Aliens accidentally summon Deathworlders. Entire fleet responds, reaches its dramatic apex as Captain Vrex leads his final assault on the laboratory. With ammunition depleted and raiders breaching their perimeter, Dr. Aaron Voss prepares to destroy the quantum bridge rather than let it fall into enemy hands. At the last possible moment, precision strikes from Colonel Hale's resolute tear through the ceiling, turning certain defeat into unexpected salvation. The three suns of the Terralon system cast their multicolored light across the research station, creating an ethereal glow that danced along its crystalline superstructure. The Terralon research station hung in space like a jewel, the pride of the Olaran Alliance, a testament to their dedication to knowledge and peaceful scientific advancement. Dr. Aaron Voss stood before the central viewing port, her slender, nearly 8-foot frame silhouetted against the backdrop of stars. Like all Olarans, she possessed an elegant, willowy build that humans might have considered fragile. Her pale blue skin shimmered subtly, with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her emotions, currently displaying the rapid, excited pulses of scientific anticipation. 300 years of interstellar travel, and we're about to unlock something that predates even that, she murmured, more to herself than to her assembled team of researchers. The laboratory around her hummed with activity. Dozens of Olaran scientists moved with practiced precision around the central platform where the artifact sat, what they had come to call the quantum bridge. The ancient device, recovered from ruins on a distant moon, had confounded their brightest minds for decades, until now. First Minister Rella, the political liaison to the research station, stood near the entrance, her tall frame rigid with concern. Unlike Aaron's excited bioluminescence, Rella's skin displayed the steady, measured patterns of caution. Dr. Voss, the Council remains uncertain about this activation. The manuscript translations are incomplete at best. We don't fully understand what the ancients intended this device for. Aaron turned from the viewport, her large, pupilless eyes reflecting the light of the nearest sun. The translations are clear enough. First Minister, this isn't a weapon, it's a communication device, a bridge between distant points in space-time. Think of what this could mean for the Alliance. Instant communication across light years without the need for quantum entanglement relays. And if you're wrong, Rella's voice carried the weight of centuries of Olaran caution. The Alliance had prospered precisely because they approached new technologies with deliberation, not haste. Aaron gestured to the safety protocols displayed on the hovering screens. Every precaution has been taken. The power levels are minimal, just enough to test our translation theories. If anything seems amiss, we shut it down immediately. Rella's skin flickered with reluctant acquiescence. The Council had, after all, already granted approval for the test. Her presence was merely a formality, and perhaps a final attempt to urge caution. Very well, Doctor. Proceed. Aaron nodded to her chief engineer, Marin Tal, who began the activation sequence. The ancient device, a spherical construction of unknown metal and crystalline components, began to hum with energy. The laboratory's lights dimmed momentarily as power was redirected to the quantum bridge. Power at 20%, called out one technician. Quantum field stabilizing, reported another. Aaron watched as the readouts climbed steadily. Everything was proceeding exactly as their calculations had predicted. The sphere began to rotate slowly, the crystalline components within glowing with an inner light. 30%, 40%. Then, something changed. The sphere's rotation accelerated suddenly, the humming rising to a higher pitch. This isn't right, Marin called out, his fingers dancing over the control interface. Power consumption is increasing exponentially. Aaron moved quickly to his side, studying the readings with growing alarm. That's impossible. The power regulators should... They're being bypassed somehow, Marin interrupted. The device is drawing power directly from our primary reactors. The lights throughout the laboratory flickered and dimmed further. Warning klaxons began to sound across the station. "Shut it down," ordered Rella from the doorway, her skin now pulsing with rapid, alarmed patterns. "We're trying," Marin responded, frantically working the controls. "It's not responding to the shutdown sequence." The sphere was now a blur of motion, its glow intensifying until it was painful to look at directly. The humming had become a high-pitched whine that set Olaran teeth on edge. And then, without warning, the sphere emitted a pulse of energy so powerful it knocked several nearby researchers off their feet. A beam of concentrated light shot upward from the device, passed through the ceiling as if it were immaterial, and disappeared into space. For a moment, there was silence in the laboratory, broken only by the continued alarms and the now steady hum of the device, which had returned to a slow rotation. "What?" asked Rella in a dangerously quiet voice. "Just happened." Erin was already reviewing the data from the energy pulse, her skin pale with shock. "It wasn't a communication device," she whispered. "At least, not in the way we understood. It's a beacon." "A beacon?" Rella's voice rose. "A beacon for what? For whom?" Arin looked up, her large eyes wide with the implications of what they had just done. "I don't know, but the signal it sent, the strength of it could potentially reach across half the galaxy." A heavy silence fell over the laboratory as the full impact of her words sank in. The Olaran Alliance had always been peaceful, its defense forces minimal, focused more on policing trade routes than actual warfare. In 3 centuries of interstellar expansion, they had encountered few truly hostile species, and those conflicts had been resolved diplomatically. But the universe was vast and largely unknown. "We need to contact the Council immediately," Rella said finally, "and pray that whatever received our unintended invitation is friendly." As the Olarans scrambled to understand what they had done, the signal from the quantum bridge raced outward through space at speeds that defied conventional physics. A call that would be heard far sooner than any of them could have anticipated. The ISS Resolute cut through the darkness of space like a predator, its massive hull bristling with weapon systems and sensor arrays. It was the flagship of the survival fleet, humanity's vanguard among the stars. Unlike the elegant, crystalline aesthetics of Olaran vessels, the Resolute was all hard angles and functional design, a reflection of the species that had built it. On the command bridge, Colonel Marcus Hale stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the tactical display with sharp, experienced eyes. At 48, with salt and pepper hair cut military short, and a face weathered by years of service, Hale embodied the resilience that had carried humanity to the stars. "Sir," called Lieutenant Jamal Chen from the communication station, "we're picking up something unusual." Hale moved to the lieutenant's station with efficient strides. "Define unusual, Lieutenant." I'm not sure, sir. The signal doesn't match any known configuration in our database. It's not using any standard communication protocol, but it's definitely artificial. And powerful. Incredibly powerful. Our sensors picked it up from over 50 light-years away." Hale frowned. The Resolute was patrolling the outer reaches of human-controlled space, far from any established colonies or known alien civilizations. An unknown signal of that strength was concerning. "Can you determine the point of origin?" Lieutenant Chen worked his console for a moment. "Yes, sir. Signal originated from the Terralon system." Terralon, Hale's second-in-command, Major Lena Saris, joined them at the communication station. "Isn't that within Olaran Alliance territory?" "It is," Hale confirmed, his frown deepening. The Olaran Alliance was known to humanity, though contact had been limited. They were peaceful, scientifically advanced, but naive in many ways. They had never faced the hardships that had forged humanity's path to the stars. "What kind of signal is it, Lieutenant? Message? Data transmission?" Chen shook his head, looking perplexed. Neither, sir. If I had to categorize it, it most closely resembles a distress beacon. But the power behind it, it's like they wanted to make sure it was heard across half the galaxy. Hale and Saris exchanged glances. In the harsh reality of space, a distress call of that magnitude could mean only one thing: a civilization in desperate trouble. "How long would it take us to reach the Terralon system at maximum burn?" Hale asked. "Approximately 18 hours, sir," responded the navigation officer. Hale nodded once. Decision made. "Set course for Terralon, maximum speed. Alert the escort fleet to our change in heading." "Sir," Sarah said quietly, "should we notify command first? This would technically be an incursion into Olaran space." "We can communicate with command en route," Hale replied. But that signal wasn't just powerful. It was desperate. And desperate situations rarely improve with time. He turned to address the bridge crew. "All stations to combat readiness. We don't know what we're flying into, but I want us prepared for anything." As the Resolute changed course, its escort of 4 smaller, but equally formidable warships falling into formation around it, Hale returned to the tactical display, studying what little they knew of the Olaran Alliance. A peaceful confederation of worlds, minimal military presence, focused on scientific and artistic advancement. They had never posed a threat to humanity. Indeed, they had shown little interest in humanity at all. What could have prompted them to send such a powerful distress call? And more importantly, what would the survival fleet find when they arrived? Hale didn't voice the other question lingering in his mind. Had the Olarans inadvertently drawn the attention of something else as well? In the vastness of space, not all ears that heard a cry for help had benevolent intentions. The Resolute accelerated to maximum speed, its massive engines pushing it to velocities that would have seemed impossible to earlier generations of humans. 18 hours to Terralon. 18 hours to prepare for the unknown. Unbeknownst to either the Olarans or the approaching human fleet, a third faction had indeed detected the powerful beacon from the quantum bridge. In the shadow of an asteroid belt at the edge of the Terralon system, a collection of mismatched ships moved with predatory purpose. The Krellax Raiders, as they called themselves, were a diverse band of opportunists, outcasts and criminals from a dozen different species, who had found common cause in piracy and plunder. Their leader, Captain Vrex, a scaled humanoid with razor-sharp teeth and eyes adapted for darkness, studied the holographic display of the Terralon research station with calculating interest. "A signal that powerful must have come from something valuable," he hissed to his assembled lieutenants. "Something the soft-skinned Olarans have been hiding." "The station has minimal defenses," noted his second-in-command, a hulking figure with 4 arms and scarred plating across most of its body. "They rely on the Alliance patrol ships, which are currently 3 cycles away, responding to a dispute in the neighboring system." Vrex's lipless mouth stretched in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Perfect timing. Whatever sent that signal is worth investigating, and likely worth taking." He zoomed in on the research station's schematics, which had been purchased at considerable expense from a corrupt Olaran official months earlier. "We move in 12 hours. That gives us time to position the fleet for optimum approach." "What about the signal itself?" asked another lieutenant, this one a spindly being with multifaceted eyes. "Could it have attracted others?" Vrex dismissed the concern with a flick of his clawed hand. "The nearest military force of any significance is days away. By the time anyone responds, we'll have taken what we want and disappeared." He bared his teeth in anticipation. "And if the Olarans resist, well, it's been too long since we've had sport." As the Krellax Raiders prepared their assault, 3 separate forces converged on the Terralon research station, each unaware of the other's approach, each with their own intentions, a confluence that would soon erupt into something none of them had anticipated. On the Terralon research station, Chaos had given way to organized emergency response. The station's limited security personnel had been mobilized. Scientists had been evacuated from non-essential areas, and the Council of the Olaran Alliance had been notified of the situation. Dr. Aaron Voss stood in the Emergency Command Center, which had been hastily established in a conference room adjacent to the main laboratory. Holographic displays showed the status of the station, the continuing activity of the quantum bridge, which still could not be deactivated, and the latest communications from Alliance headquarters. The Council is sending vessels. First Minister Rella informed the assembled senior staff, her skin patterns reflecting both relief and lingering concern. But the nearest ships of sufficient size are currently engaged in resolving a territorial dispute in the Namari system. They cannot divert for at least 72 hours. 72 hours? Marintal, the chief engineer, exclaimed. The bridge is still active. We don't know what effects continued operation might have on station systems, or if it might send more signals. We're containing the power drain, Erin said, though her own skin betrayed her uncertainty. The bridge seems to have stabilized after the initial energy pulse. It's still drawing power, but at a much reduced rate. That doesn't answer the fundamental question, Rella pointed out. What exactly did we summon with that pulse, and when will they arrive? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. The Olaran Alliance had encountered other spacefaring species over its centuries of exploration. Of course. Some were allies, some neutral, some marginally hostile, but none that posed an existential threat. The Alliance's approach to potential conflict had always been diplomatic rather than military, a luxury afforded by the relative peacefulness of their corner of the galaxy. But now, they had sent a beacon powerful enough to reach unknown regions, to unknown civilizations. I've been analyzing the signal pattern, Aaron said finally. It wasn't random. The bridge translated our activation sequence into... Well, the closest approximation would be a distress call, a very specific type of distress call, with markers that suggest an immediate existential threat to whoever sent it. So we've inadvertently told the galaxy that we're facing annihilation and need immediate military assistance, summarized Rella, her tone flat. Wonderful. It may not be as bad as all that, offered another council member. Perhaps no one will respond, or perhaps those who do will understand once we explain the situation. Aaron was about to respond when an alert sounded from one of the displays. The station's long-range sensors had detected something. Ships approaching, announced the security chief, an Olaran named Trell, who, unlike most of his species, had actually received military training. 5 vessels, moving at high velocity toward the station. Configuration unknown. They don't match any Alliance design. How soon will they arrive? Asked Rella. At their current speed, approximately 4 hours. Aaron felt a chill run through her. 4 hours. Far too soon for the nearest Alliance vessels to reach them, even if they abandoned their current mission immediately. Open a channel when they're within range, Rella ordered. We need to explain the situation before there's any misunderstanding. And if they're not interested in explanations? Trell asked quietly. Rella had no answer for that. The Terralon station, for all its scientific importance, had only basic defensive capabilities, designed to deter smugglers and pirates, not to withstand a determined assault from unknown military vessels. We continue monitoring the approaching ships, she said finally, and we prepare for all contingencies. As the command center erupted into renewed activity, Aaron returned her attention to the quantum bridge data. There had to be a way to deactivate it, to undo what they had done. And perhaps, just perhaps, understanding the ancient device more fully might provide them with options they currently couldn't imagine. Time, however, was no longer on their side. Colonel Marcus Hale studied the holographic representation of the Terralon system as the Resolute and its escort fleet approached their destination. Long-range scans had already provided a wealth of information. The position and status of the Olaran research station. The presence of the three suns that gave the system its distinctive illumination. And, most concerningly, evidence of other ships approaching from a different vector. Analysis of the unknown vessels? He asked Major Saris, who was coordinating with the sensor teams. Consistent with Raider configurations, sir, she replied. Mismatched designs, aftermarket weapon systems, irregular energy signatures. Most likely pirates or scavengers who also picked up the distress signal. Hale nodded grimly. It was as he had suspected. The powerful beacon from Terralon hadn't just reached the survival fleet. It had drawn the attention of opportunists as well. Those who saw distress not as a call for help, but as an opportunity for plunder. Time to intercept? We'll reach the station approximately 30 minutes after the Raider group, assuming current velocities. 30 minutes. Too long if the Raiders were intent on a smash-and-grab operation, or worse. Options. Hale looked to his tactical officer. We could deploy the Raptors, sir, the officer suggested, referring to the fleet's complement of fast-attack spacecraft. They could reach the station ahead of our main force, potentially before the Raiders arrive. Hale considered this. The Raptors were formidable combat vessels, but limited in number. If the Raider force was substantial, they might be overwhelmed before the Resolute arrived to support them. Alternative approaches? He prompted. We could attempt communication with the Olaran station, offered Communications Officer Lieutenant Chen. Warn them of the approaching threat. Offer guidance on defensive measures. Hale nodded. Do it. But keep in mind that the Olarans may not be equipped to understand the nature of the threat they're facing. From what we know of them, they have limited military experience. As Chen moved to establish contact with the research station, Hale turned to Major Saris. Deploy 2 Raptors as an advance force. Have them assess the situation, but avoid engagement unless the Raiders initiate hostilities or directly threaten the station. The priority is intelligence gathering and establishing our presence. Yes, sir, Saris acknowledged, moving to issue the orders. Hale returned his attention to the holographic display, mentally calculating scenarios and response options. The survival fleet had not earned its name through pacifism. Humanity's journey to the stars had been fraught with hardships and conflicts that had forged them into a formidable military power. But Hale was no warmonger. The fleet's purpose was protection, of human interests, yes, but also of the broader principles of civilization against the darker impulses that seemed universal among sentient species. If these raiders threatened the Olaran station, the survival fleet would respond with appropriate force. But first, they needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with, both in terms of the threat and in terms of what had prompted the distress call in the first place. Sir, called Lieutenant Chen, I've established contact with the Terralon research station. They're confused by our approach. They claim they didn't send a distress call. Hale frowned, moving to the communication station. Put them through. The main view screen shifted to show an Olaran female, tall, willowy, with pale blue skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Behind her, Hale could see what appeared to be some kind of emergency command center, with other Olarans moving urgently in the background. This is First Minister Rella of the Terralon Research Station, the Olaran began, her voice carrying a musical quality despite the evident tension. You are approaching Olaran Alliance territory without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately. Hale stepped forward, keeping his posture non-threatening but confident. First Minister, I am Colonel Marcus Hale of the ISS Resolute, Survival Fleet. We received a powerful distress signal originating from your station approximately 14 hours ago. We've come to render assistance. The Olaran's skin patterns shifted rapidly. Surprise, perhaps, or alarm. We sent no distress signal, Colonel. There has been an incident with an experimental device, but we did not request military intervention. Intentional or not, the signal was sent, Hale replied evenly. And it's drawn attention, not just ours. Our sensors indicate a group of vessels consistent with radar configurations approaching your station from the outer system. They'll reach you in approximately 3 hours. This news clearly startled the First Minister, whose skin now pulsed with rapid patterns. She turned to speak quietly with someone off-screen before facing Hale again. Our sensors have detected approaching vessels, but we had no way to identify them. You're certain they pose a threat? Based on their configuration and approach vector, yes. Raiders typically respond to distress signals, hoping to find vulnerable targets. Your station appears to have minimal defensive capabilities. The First Minister seemed to struggle with this information, and Hale was reminded of the vast gulf in experience between their species. Humanity had fought its way to the stars through conflict and hardship. The Olarans, from what little was known of them, had enjoyed a relatively peaceful expansion. We've deployed advanced craft to gather more information, Hale continued. The Resolute and its escort fleet will arrive shortly after the raider group. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you implement whatever defensive measures you have available. I appreciate the warning, Colonel, Rella said finally. But I must be clear. We did not invite your presence in our system. While we acknowledge your good intentions, the Olaran Alliance does not recognize your authority here. Diplomatic but firm. Hale had expected no less. Understood. First Minister. Nevertheless, we will continue our approach. If the raider group proves peaceful, we will withdraw to international space and discuss the situation further. If they prove hostile. He let the implication hang. After a moment's hesitation, Rella nodded. We will continue monitoring all approaching vessels. Terralon out. As the communication ended, Major Saris moved to Hale's side. They're afraid of us, she observed quietly. With reason, Hale acknowledged. To them, we must seem as potentially threatening as the raiders. Perhaps more so, given our military capacity. And the mysterious distress signal? Hale's expression hardened slightly. Something on that station sent a cry for help, powerful enough to reach across 50 light-years. Whether it was intentional or not, whether they understand what they've done or not. I intend to find out what technology could do such a thing, and ensure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. As the Resolute continued its approach to the Terralon system, the 2 Raptor scout ships detached from the main fleet, their powerful engines propelling them ahead at speeds that would bring them to the research station well before either the raiders or the main human fleet. The pieces were moving into position, and soon, very soon, 3 disparate forces would converge around the unsuspecting Olaran research station. Dr. Erin Voss had never considered herself a military strategist. Her life had been devoted to knowledge, to unraveling the mysteries of ancient civilizations and their technologies. Yet now, she found herself in the station's modest security center, attempting to understand the tactical displays that showed the approaching vessels from 2 different directions. The smaller craft approaching from this vector appear to be advanced scouts for the larger group that contacted us, explained Security Chief Trell, his fingers manipulating the holographic display to highlight the trajectories. The vessels approaching from the outer system have not responded to our hails. And you believe these to be the raiders that the human commander warned us about? Aaron asked. The term, feeling strange on her tongue. Piracy existed within the Alliance, of course, but it was a minor concern, dealt with by law enforcement rather than military forces. Their approach pattern is consistent with hostile intent, Trell confirmed. They're using the asteroid belt for cover, minimizing their sensor profile, not the actions of peaceful visitors. First Minister Rella, who had joined them after her communication with the human colonel, frowned deeply. So we find ourselves caught between unknown military vessels who invited themselves into our space, and potential raiders drawn by our accidental signal. Her skin patterns reflected her displeasure. Dr. Voss, This situation is the direct result of your team's actions. Aaron's own skin dimmed slightly in acknowledgement of the rebuke. Yes, Minister. We miscalculated the nature of the quantum bridge. But recriminations won't help us now. She gestured to the quantum bridge data displayed on a nearby screen. My team has continued analyzing the device. We believe we might be able to modify its output, not to shut it down completely, but perhaps to send a different type of signal. What good would that do? Rella asked. It depends on the signal we choose to send, Aaron replied. The bridge appears capable of transmitting complex quantum information almost instantaneously across vast distances. If we could adapt it to disrupt ship systems. A weapon, Rella sounded scandalized. You propose turning an ancient artifact into a weapon? Aaron's skin patterns shifted to reflect determination. I propose using every tool at our disposal to protect this station and its personnel. Minister, the bridge is already active. We merely need to change its purpose. Before Rella could respond, an alert sounded from the tactical display. The advanced scouts from the human fleet have entered our immediate space, Trell announced. They're requesting permission to approach the station directly. Rella hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the developing situation. The Olaran Alliance had strict protocols regarding military vessels in their territory, protocols that had already been breached by the humans' unilateral decision to respond to the accidental distress call. Minister, Aaron said quietly, whatever their motivations, the humans at least communicated with us. They warned us about the other approaching vessels. If there is to be conflict, I would rather have them nearby than not. After a moment's further consideration, Rella nodded. Grant them approach permission, but restrict them to the outer docking platforms, and maintain full transparency in our communications. I want all exchanges with both groups recorded for the Council. As Trell moved to carry out these orders, Aaron returned her attention to the quantum bridge data. Time was running short, and she needed to determine if her theory about repurposing the device was viable before either the raiders or the main human fleet arrived. The fate of the station, and possibly much more, might depend on it. The Raptor scout ships, sleek and predatory in design, took up positions near the Olaran research station, their sensors continuously scanning both the station itself and the approaching raider vessels. Aboard the lead Raptor, Lieutenant Commander Kara Way maintained an open channel with both the station and the Resolute. Raider group continuing approach, she reported. Estimate their arrival in approximately 40 minutes. They're maintaining calm silence despite the station's hails. Understood! Raptor 1, came Colonel Hale's voice from the Resolute. Maintain your position but do not engage unless they initiate hostilities. We're pushing our engines to close the gap. Way acknowledged the order. Then, switched to the channel connected to the research station. Terralon Station. This is Raptor 1. We're detecting unusual energy fluctuations from within your facility. Can you confirm the nature of these emissions? There was a brief pause before a new voice responded. Not the First Minister who had spoken with Colonel Hale, but another Olaran female. Raptor 1. This is Dr. Aaron Voss, Chief Researcher. The energy fluctuations you're detecting are from the quantum bridge, the device that inadvertently sent the distress signal. We're attempting to modify its output. Way frowned. Modify how, Doctor? Our sensors indicate the energy levels are increasing. We're trying to repurpose it as a defensive measure, came the reply. The bridge operates on quantum principles that might allow us to create localized disruptions in ship systems, specifically targeting the raider vessels if they prove hostile. Y exchanged glances with her co-pilot. This was unexpected information, and potentially significant. Dr. Voss, this is Lieutenant Commander Way. I need to understand the nature of this defensive measure. What kind of disruption are we talking about? And what's the effective range? In theory, a focused quantum field that would temporarily disable electronic systems. Range is uncertain. We've never tested this application before. We suppressed a grimace. Untested theoretical weapons were rarely a positive addition to an already tense tactical situation. Be advised, Doctor, that such a measure could affect our vessels as well if we're within range. I strongly recommend coordination before any such system is activated. Understood, Commander. We're still in the calibration phase. I'll ensure you're kept informed of our progress. As the communication ended, Wei immediately relayed this new information to the Resolute. Colonel Hale would need to know that the Olarans were attempting to weaponize whatever technology had sent the distress signal in the first place. Meanwhile, the raider vessels continued their approach, still silent, still ominous in their intent. Captain Vrex of the Krelax Raiders observed the holographic display with growing interest. The appearance of the small, obviously military craft near the Olaran station was an unexpected complication, but not necessarily an insurmountable one. Analysis of the scout ships, he demanded of his sensor operator. Advanced design, heavily armed for their size, came the reply. Configuration matches known human military vessels. Vrex hissed thoughtfully. Humans. Deathworlders, as some called them. A species forged in the crucible of a harsh homeworld that had produced warriors of considerable skill. Their presence was inconvenient. Are there more coming? He asked. Sensor readings suggest a larger force following the same trajectory. Yes, but they are still hours away. Vrex's lipless mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his kind. Then, our window of opportunity remains. The scout ships are formidable, but outnumbered. And the prize. His eyes, fixed on the readout, showing the massive energy signature from within the station. The prize is too valuable to abandon. Your orders, Captain? Asked his second-in-command. Vrex considered for a moment, his tactical mind weighing options and probabilities. Maintain our approach. Prepare boarding parties. Our primary objective remains the acquisition of whatever technology is generating that energy signature. But ready all weapon systems as well, if the humans interfere. His teeth gleamed in the dim light of the bridge. We will show them why the Krelax are feared across 3 sectors. As his crew moved to carry out his commands, Vrex returned his attention to the station schematic. Whatever the Olarans had found, or created, was powerful enough to send a signal that had reached across vast distances of space. Such technology could transform the fortunes of the Krelax Raiders, elevating them from mere pirates to a force that could challenge even established military powers. He would not be denied this prize, not by the soft-skinned Olarans, and not by human interlopers. The hunt was on. On board the Resolute, Colonel Hale digested the latest reports from the Raptor scouts with growing concern. The situation was evolving rapidly, and not in promising directions. The Olarans are attempting to weaponize the same technology that sent the distress signal, he summarized for his command staff. An untested application that could potentially affect our vessels as well as the raiders. And the raiders continue their approach, now confirmed hostile, added Major Saris. Raptor sensors detect weapons powering up and boarding preparations. Hale nodded grimly. Time to intercept. At current speed, we're still 90 minutes out. The raiders will reach the station in less than 30. Too long. The Raptors were formidable scout ships, but they weren't designed to repel a concentrated assault from a raider fleet of the size their sensors had detected. Options. Hale looked around at his senior officers. We could advise the Olarans to evacuate critical personnel, suggested Lieutenant Chen. They must have escape vessels. And abandon their station to the raiders? Saris shook her head. Whatever technology sent that distress signal is powerful enough to be detected across 50 light-years. Do we want that in the hands of pirates? Hale silently agreed with his XO's assessment. The technology the Olarans had been experimenting with, this quantum bridge, represented a potential threat if misused. The survival fleet's mandate included preventing the proliferation of destabilizing technologies. We need more time, he said finally. Lieutenant Chen, open a channel to Dr. Voss on the research station. When the connection was established, Hale addressed the Alaran scientist directly. Dr. Voss, Colonel Hale, I understand you're attempting to modify your quantum bridge as a defensive measure. That's correct, Colonel, came the reply. The Alaran's voice steady, despite the evident stress of their situation. We're making progress, but it's complicated. The bridge wasn't designed for this purpose. I need to know if your modification could buy us time. Our main fleet is still 90 minutes from your position, but the raiders will arrive much sooner. There was a brief pause before Dr. Voss responded. In theory, yes, but the effect would be temporary at best. And as I told your scout commander, we can't guarantee it won't affect your vessels as well. Hale made a quick decision. Focus your efforts on extending the duration of the effect rather than its power. Even a brief disruption of the Raider systems might give us the time we need to reach you. My Raptor pilots can implement shielding protocols that should provide some protection from quantum fluctuations. I'll redirect our efforts accordingly, Colonel. But I should warn you, we're working with ancient technology that we don't fully understand. There are significant risks. Understood, Doctor. But at this point, those risks seem preferable to the certainty of a Raider assault on your station. Resolute out. As the communication ended, Hale turned to Major Saris. Have the Raptors pull back to maximum effective weapons range from the station. Advise them to implement full quantum shielding protocols. Yes, sir, Saris acknowledged, moving to relay the orders. Hale returned his attention to the tactical display, watching as the Raider fleet continued its inexorable approach toward the research station. Time was running out, and they were placing a significant bet on untested alien technology operated by scientists with no military experience. But sometimes, war came down to calculated gambles. And if there was one thing humanity had learned in its harsh journey to the stars, it was how to play the odds when survival was on the line. Dr. Erin Voss worked feverishly at the control interface, her long fingers dancing across the holographic controls as she recalibrated the quantum bridge. Around her team moved with equal urgency, making adjustments to power flows and monitoring the device's increasingly complex energy patterns. Quantum field stability at 78%, reported Marintal from a nearby station. That's the best we can achieve with the current configuration. Erin nodded absently, her focus entirely on the calibrations. The bridge had never been designed as a weapon. That much was becoming increasingly clear as they attempted to repurpose it. Its original function appeared to be communication across vast distances, possibly even between galaxies. But the quantum principles it operated on could, in theory, be manipulated to create localized disruptions in electronic systems. In theory, Doctor, called Security Chief Trell from the tactical station. The Raider vessels have accelerated. New estimated arrival, 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Not enough time for the human fleet to reach them, but perhaps enough to complete the modifications to the bridge. Status of the human scout ships? She asked, without looking up from her work. They've withdrawn to a distance of approximately 5,000 kilometers, maintaining a defensive posture. Following Colonel Hale's suggestion, then, Erin hoped the human vessels had indeed implemented whatever shielding they believed would protect them from the quantum disruption, assuming she could get it working at all. First Minister Rella entered the laboratory, her tall frame rigid with tension, her skin patterns reflecting the gravity of their situation. Dr. Voss, the Council has been fully briefed. They authorize the use of the modified bridge as a defensive measure, but stress that this authorization is for this emergency only. Understood, Minister, Erin replied, still focused on her calibrations. Though I should note that we're venturing into completely uncharted territory here. The effects could be more extensive than we anticipate. More extensive how? Rella's skin patterns shifted to display concern. Erin finally looked up from her work. The bridge operates on quantum principles that we only partially understand. In attempting to create a localized disruption field, we're manipulating forces that could, potentially, have wider effects than intended. What kind of wider effects? I don't know, Aaron admitted. That's the point. We're working with technology far beyond our current understanding, attempting to use it in ways it was never designed for, under extreme time pressure. The results are unpredictable. Rella's skin patterns now displayed alarm. Are you suggesting we shouldn't proceed? Aaron returned her attention to the calibrations. I'm suggesting that you should prepare the station for possible unexpected consequences. Have all non-essential personnel move to the central core sections, away from the outer rings, and make sure our own critical systems have redundant backups active. As Rella moved to issue these orders, Trell called out another update. Raider vessels now 8 minutes from weapons range. They're dispersing into an attack formation. The moment of truth was approaching rapidly. Aaron made a final adjustment to the bridge controls, then stepped back to observe the device. The sphere was now rotating at a steady pace, its internal components glowing with a pulsating blue light that seemed to shift in and out of normal space-time. Quantum field stabilized at 82%, announced Marin. That's our ceiling with the current configuration. Aaron nodded. It will have to do. Begin power buildup for the disruption pulse. As her team moved to carry out this order, Aaron opened a communication channel to the human scout ships. Raptor 1, this is Dr. Voss. We're preparing to activate the modified bridge. The pulse will emit in approximately 7 minutes. Confirm your readiness. Confirmed, Doctor, came the response from Lieutenant Commander Wei. We've implemented quantum shielding and moved to what we hope is a safe distance. But I should warn you, the Raider vessels are deploying what appear to be boarding craft alongside their main attack force. Boarding craft. Of course. The Raiders weren't just interested in destroying the station. They wanted the technology within it. The quantum bridge itself was likely their primary target. Understood, Commander. We'll proceed as planned. Aaron closed the channel and turned to Trell. Status of station defenses. All available defensive systems are active, the security chief replied. But they were designed to deter smugglers, not repel a coordinated military assault. We can slow the Raiders down, perhaps, but not stop them entirely. Then, we'd better hope this works, Aaron murmured, returning her attention to the bridge controls. The device was now humming audibly, the pitch rising as power continued to build toward the threshold necessary for the disruption pulse. 5 minutes to emission. 5 minutes to discover whether their desperate gamble would buy them the time they needed, or fail catastrophically. 5 minutes that would determine the fate of the Terralon research station and everyone aboard it. Captain Vrex watched with predatory anticipation as his fleet closed on the Alaran research station. The human scout ships had withdrawn to a cautious distance, a tactical retreat that suggested they recognized the superior numbers of the Krelax Raiders. Boarding craft ready for launch, reported his second-in-command. Primary and secondary assault teams standing by. Excellent, Vrex hissed. Target their minimal defense systems first, then breach at these points. He indicated several locations on the station schematic where their intelligence suggested security would be weakest. Captain, called the sensor operator, a note of concern in his voice. I'm detecting an unusual energy buildup from within the station. The signature matches the beacon that drew our attention initially, but the pattern is different. Vrex frowned, moving to the sensor display. The readout showed a rapidly intensifying energy signature centered on what must be the technology they had come to seize. But there was something wrong about the pattern, something that triggered a primal warning in his predator's instincts. They're weaponizing it, he realized aloud. Accelerate our approach. Launch the boarding craft immediately. We need to seize that technology before they can activate whatever weapon they're preparing. His crew rushed to comply. But even as they did, Vrex felt a growing unease. The Alarans were known as scientists and philosophers, not warriors. For them to attempt a military application of advanced technology spoke to their desperation, and desperate prey was unpredictable. "All ships, prepare for possible electronic countermeasures," he ordered. "Route emergency power to shields and life support." Better to be cautious. Whatever the Olarans were planning, Vrex intended to survive it and claim his prize regardless. Aboard Raptor 1, Lieutenant Commander Wei monitored the approaching raider fleet with professional detachment. The pirates had accelerated their approach and launched what appeared to be boarding craft, a clear indication that they intended to seize the station rather than simply destroy it. "Quantum shielding at maximum," reported her co-pilot. "But if the Olaran device is as powerful as we suspect, I'm not sure how effective our protection will be." Wei nodded grimly. "Noted. But we have our orders. If the disruption pulse works as Dr. Voss hopes, we'll have a brief window to engage the raiders while their systems are compromised. Be ready to move in the moment we confirm the pulse has been emitted. And if it affects us as well, then we'll all be drifting until our systems reset." Wei replied with a tight smile. "Let's hope the Olarans know what they're doing." On the Resolute, Colonel Hale watched the tactical display with growing tension. The raiders had accelerated their approach and launched boarding craft. They were clearly making a push to seize the station before the main human fleet could arrive. "Time to intercept?" he asked for the dozenth time. "Still 78 minutes at maximum burn," replied the navigation officer. "We're pushing the engines to their limits, sir." "Too long. If the Olaran's modified quantum bridge failed to slow the raiders, the station would be overrun long before the Resolute arrived." "Maintain course and speed," Hale ordered, "and prepare all weapon systems. The moment we're in range, I want to be ready to engage." As his crew acknowledged the orders, Hale's attention returned to the tactical display, where the drama was unfolding in real time. The raider fleet had now entered weapons range of the station, their boarding craft streaking ahead toward their targets. And at the center of it all, the energy signature from the quantum bridge continued to build toward what Hale hoped would be a decisive intervention. In the laboratory at the heart of the Terralon Research Station, Dr. Aaron Voss made the final adjustments to the quantum bridge controls. The device was now rotating so rapidly, it appeared as a blur, its glow intensifying to a brilliant blue-white that forced most of the observers to shield their eyes. "Power at maximum capacity," announced Marintal. "The bridge is ready for pulse emission." Aaron took a deep breath, her skin patterns reflecting a complex mix of scientific fascination and very practical fear. They were about to use an ancient device in a way it had never been intended, with no real understanding of the consequences. "Status of the raider fleet?" she asked Trell. "Entering weapons range now. Their forward vessels have opened fire on our outer defensive arrays. Boarding craft approaching docking sections 3, 7, and 12. No more time for hesitation or second thoughts. All personnel, brace for possible system disruptions," Aaron announced over the station-wide communication system. Then, to her team in the laboratory, "Initiating quantum disruption pulse in 3, 2, 1. She activated the final sequence. For a brief moment, nothing seemed to happen. The bridge continued its rapid rotation, its glow unchanged. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing, the device emitted a pulse of pure quantum energy that expanded outward in all directions at impossible speed. The laboratory lights flickered and died, emergency systems activating immediately to bathe the room in a red glow. "Status?" Aaron called out, blinking against the afterimages seared into her vision by the pulse. For several seconds, there was no response. Then, gradually, her team began to report in. "Internal systems temporarily disrupted but restoring," came Marin's voice from the darkness. "Emergency power holding." "External sensors offline," reported another technician. "Switching to backup arrays." Aaron moved to a still-functioning display that showed the status of the bridge itself. The device had slowed its rotation considerably, its glow dimmed to a faint blue luminescence. It appeared to have expended much of its accumulated energy in the pulse. "What about the raiders?" she asked urgently. "Did it work?" It was several more tense seconds before Trell responded from the security station, his voice tight with concentration. "Backup sensors show. Yes. The raider vessels appear to be drifting. No power signatures. No weapons activity. The boarding craft have also gone dark." A ripple of cautious relief passed through the laboratory team. It had worked, at least partially. The question now was how long the effect would last, and whether it would give the human fleet enough time to reach them. "And the human scout ships?" Aaron asked. Trell checked another display. "Also affected, though less severely. Their power signatures are fluctuating but not completely offline. They appear to be implementing some kind of restart protocol. So the quantum shielding the humans had mentioned had provided some protection, though not complete immunity. Interesting, and potentially valuable information, assuming they all survived the current crisis." "How long until our primary systems are back online?" Aaron asked Marin. "Difficult to say," the engineer replied. "The pulse created cascading failures in several key systems. I estimate at least 20 minutes for minimal functionality, perhaps an hour for full restoration." 20 minutes. A window of opportunity, but a narrow one. If the raider vessels recovered more quickly. "First Minister," Aaron called to Rella, who had remained in the laboratory during the pulse emission. "We need to contact the human fleet. Let them know the pulse was successful, but that we have limited time before the raiders recover." Rella nodded, her skin patterns showing determination despite the emergency lighting that cast everything in an eerie red glow. "I'll use the backup communication system in the command center. It operates on an isolated power grid that might have been protected from the worst effects of the pulse." As Rella hurried from the laboratory, Aaron turned her attention back to the quantum bridge. The device had reverted to a state similar to its condition before they had attempted to activate it initially. Quiescent, but still operational at a low level. They might be able to generate another pulse if necessary, but it would take time to rebuild the energy required. Time that they might not have. "Begin restoring power to critical systems," she ordered her team. "Prioritize sensors, communications, and defensive capabilities. And keep monitoring the raider vessels. I want to know the moment they show signs of recovery." As her team moved to carry out these instructions, Aaron allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had successfully repurposed an ancient communication device into a defensive weapon, a feat that would have seemed impossible mere hours ago. But the crisis was far from over. The raiders would recover eventually, and when they did, they would be angry. Their only hope lay with the approaching human fleet, a species they knew little about, with motivations that remained unclear. Out of the frying pan, into the fire? Perhaps. But for now, they had bought themselves time. And time, in situations like this, could make all the difference. Lieutenant Commander Wei blinked against the disorientation as Raptor 1's systems flickered and sputtered around her. The quantum pulse had hit them hard, despite their shielding and distance from the station. "Damage report," she managed, forcing herself to focus on the immediate situation. Her co-pilot worked the partially functioning controls, his movements precise despite the emergency. Main power at 40% and fluctuating. Weapon systems offline. Propulsion at minimal capacity. Communications, patchy at best. And the raiders? A quick check of their still operational forward sensors provided the answer. Dead in space, as far as I can tell. No power signatures, no movement. The pulse hit them much harder than it hit us. Wei nodded, allowing herself a small smile of satisfaction. The Olaran device had worked better than expected, at least against the raiders. Now they needed to capitalize on the advantage before it faded. "Implement full system restart," she ordered. "Priority to propulsion and weapons. We need to be mobile and combat-ready before the raiders recover." As her crew worked to bring their vessel back to operational status, Wei considered their options. The Resolute was still too far away to provide immediate support. But if they could get their Raptors fully functional again, they might be able to disable the Raider vessels permanently, or at least long enough for the main fleet to arrive. It would be a gamble. 2 scout ships, even highly advanced ones like the Raptors, against a Raider fleet of superior numbers. But humanity had faced worse odds in its struggle to establish itself among the stars. And sometimes, Wei reflected, the best defense was a decisive offense. Captain Vrex snarled in rage as his flagship drifted helplessly, its systems offline or malfunctioning in ways his crew was struggling to understand. The Olaran weapon, whatever it was, had proven far more effective than he had anticipated. "Status!" he demanded of his second-in-command, who was working by the dim glow of emergency lighting to restart critical systems. "Primary power grid completely overloaded," came the grim reply. "Auxiliary systems attempting to compensate, but the damage is extensive. Weapons, propulsion, advanced sensors, all offline. And the boarding craft? No response to communications. They appear to have been affected as well." Vrex slammed a clawed fist against the nearest console, his predator's instincts screaming at the vulnerability of their position. They were exposed, defenseless, prey rather than hunters. "How long to restore basic operations?" he demanded. "Unknown. Our engineers have never encountered a weapon like this before. They're working to bypass damaged systems. But..." The second-in-command left the implications unspoken. Vrex moved to a viewport, staring out at the distant research station, now visible only as a faint collection of lights against the blackness of space. The prize was still there, tantalizing in its power. The very weapon that had disabled his fleet was the technology he had come to seize. And he refused to be denied. "Divert all available emergency power to communications," he ordered. "I want contact with every vessel in our fleet that can still respond. We will adapt. We will overcome. And we will take what is ours." On the Resolute, Colonel Hale absorbed the fragmentary communications from both the Raptor scouts and the Olaran research station with a mixture of surprise and strategic calculation. The quantum pulse was more effective than anticipated. He summarized for his command staff. "Both the Raiders and our Raptors were affected, though our vessels are recovering more quickly due to the shielding protocols." "Estimated recovery time for the Raiders?" asked Major Saris. "Unknown. The Olaran sensors are still partially offline, and our Raptors can only provide limited information. But Lieutenant Commander Wei believes we have a window of opportunity, perhaps 30 minutes before the Raiders restore enough functionality to pose a threat again." "And our time to intercept?" "Still 63 minutes at current velocity." Saris frowned. "Too long. Even with the Raiders temporarily disabled, that leaves them at least 30 minutes to regroup and potentially overrun the station before we arrive." Hale nodded grimly. "Which is why I've authorized Lieutenant Commander Wei to engage the Raiders as soon as her Raptors are combat-ready. Her orders are to disable their propulsion and weapon systems permanently, if possible, targeting the vessels closest to the station first." 2 Raptors against a Raider fleet? Saris looked skeptical. "Even with the advantage of recovering first, those are not favorable odds." "No," Hale agreed. "But they're the only odds we have. The Olaran's quantum bridge technology is too valuable to allow it to fall into Raider hands, and too dangerous to leave unprotected." As his XO nodded her reluctant agreement, Hale returned his attention to the tactical display. The situation remained fluid, unpredictable. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. What had begun as a response to a distress call was evolving into something more complex, a 3-way confrontation with potentially far-reaching consequences. And at the center of it all, a technology that could send signals across vast distances of space in an instant. A technology that could, apparently, disable entire fleets with a single pulse. A technology that, Hale was beginning to suspect, was far more significant than even the Olarans themselves realized. Uh... Dr. Aaron Voss supervised the gradual restoration of the Terralon Research Station's systems, with one eye on the status displays and the other on the external sensor readings. The pulse from the quantum bridge had bought them time, but that time was rapidly running out. "The human scout vessels are moving again," reported Trell from the security station, which had been among the first systems to be brought back online. "They appear to be maneuvering toward the Raider fleet." Aaron frowned. "With what purpose? Their main fleet is still too far away to provide support." "Unknown, but their weapon systems are powering up." Before Aaron could respond to this information, First Minister Rella returned to the laboratory, her skin patterns displaying a mixture of concern and determination. "I've spoken with Colonel Hale via the backup communication system," she announced. "The human scouts have been ordered to engage the Raider vessels, to disable them if possible before they can recover fully." "That's bold," Aaron observed. "Their scouts are outnumbered significantly. The Colonel believes it's necessary to prevent the Raiders from regrouping and overwhelming us before their main fleet arrives," Rella explained. "He's also requesting more information about the quantum bridge, specifically, whether we could generate another pulse if necessary." Aaron turned to Marin, who had been monitoring the bridge's status. "Well, could we?" The engineer hesitated. "Theoretically, yes. The bridge is still operational, just depleted. It would need time to accumulate the necessary energy for another pulse of similar magnitude. And I'm not certain what the effects of multiple pulses might be on the device itself. We're already operating well beyond its design parameters." "How much time?" Rella pressed. "At least 40 minutes. Possibly longer," Marin replied. "And that's assuming we can restore full power to the laboratory systems, which is still in progress." Rella's skin patterns reflected frustration. "The human colonel estimates the Raiders will begin recovering in less than 30 minutes. Then we focus on restoring our defensive capabilities," Aaron decided. "And we hope the human scouts can buy us additional time." She turned to Trell. "What's the status of our security personnel?" "All available staff are deployed to potential breach points," the security chief reported. "But, as I've noted previously, we're not equipped for a military engagement. If the Raiders board in force..." He didn't need to complete the thought. Everyone in the laboratory understood the implications. "First Minister," Aaron said, turning to Rella, "I believe it's time to consider evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. If we can't hold the station..." "The Council has already authorized emergency evacuation preparations," Rella interrupted. "But we face a difficult decision regarding the quantum bridge itself. We cannot allow such technology to fall into Raider hands." Aaron understood immediately what Rella was suggesting. "You're talking about destroying it." "As a last resort, yes. The Council has authorized me to make that determination if the situation becomes untenable." Aaron felt a surge of scientific protectiveness toward the ancient device. The bridge represented a technological breakthrough of immense significance, not just as a potential weapon, but as a means of communication and connection across vast distances. Destroying it would be a devastating loss to their understanding of the universe. But Rella was right. In the wrong hands, such technology could destabilize entire regions of space. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Aaron said finally. "For now, we focus on restoration and defense, and we see what the humans can do against the Raiders." As her team continued their work, Aaron moved to a viewport that provided a clear view of space beyond the station. In the distance, she could just make out the sleek forms of the human scout ships as they accelerated toward the drifting Raider vessels. An unlikely alliance of necessity was forming. Whether it would be enough to save the station and the quantum bridge remained to be seen. Lieutenant Commander Wei guided Raptor 1 toward the largest of the Raider vessels, its systems now restored to approximately 70% functionality. Not optimal for combat, but serviceable. Beside her, Raptor 2 maintained formation, both scout ships moving with predatory intent toward their targets. "Weapons locked on the flagship's propulsion systems," reported her weapons officer. "Ready to fire on your command." Wei's finger hovered over the firing control. The raiders were showing signs of recovery, but their systems were still largely offline. A precision strike now could disable them permanently before they became a threat again. But something about the situation nagged at her tactical instincts. The raiders had launched boarding craft before the quantum pulse hit. Those smaller vessels might have been less affected, might even now be preparing to continue their mission while the main fleet struggled to recover. "Adjust scan pattern," she ordered. "Focus on the space between the raider fleet and the research station. Look for smaller vessels, possibly already recovering." The sensor operator complied, and almost immediately. "Contact. Multiple small craft moving slowly toward the station. Their power signatures are weak but present." Wei made a split-second decision. "Change of plans. Raptor 2. Continue toward the raider flagship. Disable their propulsion and weapon systems. Then move to the next largest vessel. Raptor 1 will intercept the boarding craft." As Raptor 2 acknowledged the order and maintained course toward the main raider fleet, Wei banked her vessel sharply, accelerating toward the cluster of smaller craft that were indeed making their way toward the Alaran station. The boarding party was continuing its mission, perhaps hoping to seize the quantum bridge while the defenders were still recovering from the pulse effects. Not if she could help it. "Weapons locked on the lead boarding craft," announced her weapons officer. "Fire!" Wei commanded, and Raptor 1's advanced weaponry lashed out with precision, striking the first boarding craft squarely in its propulsion section. The small vessel immediately went dark, drifting helplessly in space. "One down," Wei noted with satisfaction. "Target the next." Raptor 1 continued its attack run, methodically disabling the boarding craft one by one. Behind them, Wei could see Raptor 2 engaging the raider flagship, its weapons striking with surgical precision against vulnerable systems. But even as they pressed their advantage, Wei knew it was temporary. There were too many raider vessels, and despite the quantum pulse's effects, they were beginning to show signs of coordinated recovery. More concerning, she detected communications between the vessels. The raiders were adapting, regrouping. "Contact the Resolute," she ordered her communications officer. "Inform Colonel Hale that we're engaging the raiders, but will require support as soon as possible. And advise the research station that boarding parties are still active. They should prepare for possible breaches." As Raptor 1 continued its offensive against the boarding craft, Wei checked their weapon reserves and power levels. They could maintain this pace for perhaps 20 minutes before needing to conserve resources. After that, they would need a miracle, or the timely arrival of the Resolute. Captain Vrex watched with mounting rage as the human scout ships systematically disabled his boarding craft and began attacking his recovering fleet. The smaller vessels were proving more agile and quicker to recover than his larger ships, giving them a temporary but significant advantage. "Status of our weapon systems," he demanded of his weapons officer. "Primary weapons still offline. Secondary systems at minimal power. Not enough for effective targeting." Vrex snarled in frustration. His flagship was essentially defenseless for the moment, forced to watch as the humans picked off his smaller vessels one by one. But not all was lost. Several of his boarding craft had already been close enough to the research station when the pulse hit that they had managed to attach to its outer hull, their specialized equipment partially shielded from the worst effects. And his engineers were making progress in restoring basic functionality to the flagship systems. "Divert all available power to communications," he ordered. "I want contact with every boarding team that can still respond. Their mission is unchanged. Penetrate the station, locate the weapon technology, secure it at all costs." As his crew rushed to comply, Vrex returned his attention to the tactical display, where the human scout ships continued their systematic assault on his fleet. They were effective. He had to admit, disciplined, precise. But they were also just two vessels against his many. And time was on his side. His fleet was recovering, slowly but surely. The humans' main force was still too distant to intervene immediately. The game was not over, not yet. Dr. Aaron Voss had just received word that the station's primary defensive systems were back online when the first explosion rocked the outer hull. "We have a breach in Section 14, called out Trell from the security station. "Raiders have penetrated the outer airlock. Security teams responding, but they're heavily armed." Aaron's skin patterns shifted to display alarm. "How is that possible? I thought the human scouts were engaging the boarding craft." "They are," Trell confirmed. "But some of the craft had already attached to our hull before the pulse hit. They're cutting their way in from multiple points." This was the scenario they had feared. Raiders inside the station itself, making their way toward the quantum bridge, while the station's defenders were still recovering from the pulse effects. "Seal all laboratory access points," Aaron ordered. "Activate emergency containment protocols." She turned to Marin. "Status of the bridge?" "Power levels at 30% of what would be needed for another pulse," the engineer reported. "Still accumulating, but slowly." First Minister Rella, who had been coordinating with the council, approached Aaron with grim determination, evident in her skin patterns. "The situation has escalated beyond our control. Doctor, the council has authorized implementation of Protocol Omega." Protocol Omega, the destruction of the quantum bridge to prevent its capture. "Minister, I must object," Aaron began. "The bridge represents a technological breakthrough of immeasurable value. To destroy it is preferable to allowing it to fall into the hands of those who would use it as a weapon." Rella finished firmly. "I understand your scientific objections, Doctor, but the Council's decision is final. Prepare the destruction sequence." Before Aaron could respond, another explosion shook the laboratory, this one closer than the first. The Raiders were making progress through the station's defenses. "Time estimate until the Raiders reach the laboratory?" Rella asked Trell. "At their current rate of advance, no more than 15 minutes, the security chief replied grimly. "Our personnel are engaging them, but they're outmatched in both numbers and weaponry. 15 minutes. Not enough time for the human fleet to arrive. Not enough time for the bridge to accumulate the energy needed for another pulse. But perhaps enough time for one last desperate gamble." "Minister," Aaron said, her mind racing, "I have an alternative suggestion. Rather than destroying the bridge entirely, we could modify it one more time, to create a focused quantum disruption, specifically targeting the Raiders inside the station." "You just said the bridge doesn't have enough power for another pulse," Rella pointed out. "Not a full-scale pulse. No, but a localized effect, confined to the station itself. That might be possible with the energy already accumulated." "And the risks?" Aaron's skin patterns betrayed her uncertainty. "Significant. We'd be operating even further beyond the bridge's design parameters. The effects on our own systems would be severe, but it would be temporary, and preferable to losing the technology entirely." Rella considered this for a long moment, the gravity of the decision evident in her stance. Finally, her skin pattern shifted to indicate reluctant agreement. "You have 10 minutes, Doctor. If the modification isn't ready by then, or if the Raiders breach this laboratory, I will initiate Protocol Omega without further delay." Aaron nodded and immediately turned to her team. "Marin, reconfigure the bridge for a localized pulse, focused within the station boundaries. Everyone else, secure all essential data and prepare for another system disruption." As her team rushed to comply, Aaron opened a communication channel to the human scout ships. They needed to be warned about what was coming, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could coordinate their efforts to maximize the effect. The final confrontation was approaching rapidly. The fate of the quantum bridge, and potentially much more, would be decided in the next few minutes. Lieutenant Commander Wei received the communication from Dr. Voss with a mixture of surprise and tactical interest. "They're planning another quantum pulse," her communications officer asked incredulously. "The first one nearly crippled us, even with shielding." "A more focused pulse, confined to the station itself," Wei clarified. "And they're warning us, so we can prepare." She considered the implications quickly. The Alarans are getting desperate. Raiders must have breached the station. She opened a channel to Raptor 2, which was still engaged with the main Raider fleet. "Raptor 2, be advised. The research station is preparing a localized quantum pulse within the next 10 minutes. Complete your current engagement and withdraw to minimum safe distance." As Raptor 2 acknowledged the order, Wei studied the tactical situation. They had disabled several of the boarding craft and done significant damage to two of the larger Raider vessels. But the enemy fleet was showing increasing signs of recovery. More concerning, at least some of the Raiders had successfully breached the station's defenses. "Set course for the research station," she ordered. "If Raiders have boarded, the Alarans will need all the help they can get." "But our orders were to engage the Raider fleet," her second-in-command pointed out. "Our primary mission is to protect the quantum bridge technology," Wei corrected. "If Raiders have reached the station interior, that's where the critical fight will be." She paused, then added, "Besides, if the Alarans are about to trigger another quantum pulse inside the station, I'd rather not be in the middle of the Raider fleet when it happens." As Raptor 1 changed course, accelerating toward the research station, Wei opened a channel to the Resolute. Colonel Hale needed to be updated on this significant development, and on her decision to provide direct support to the Alarans against the boarding parties. The situation was evolving rapidly, the balance of advantage shifting moment by moment, and Wei couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching a tipping point, one that would determine not just the outcome of this confrontation, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and the Alaran Alliance. Colonel Hale absorbed Lieutenant Commander Wei's report with grim focus. The situation at the Terralon research station had deteriorated faster than anticipated. Raiders breaching the station's defenses, the Alarans preparing a desperate countermeasure, and his advanced scouts now moving to provide direct support. "Time to intercept?" he asked his navigation officer yet again. 42 minutes, sir. We're pushing the engines beyond recommended parameters as it is." Still too long. The critical phase of this confrontation would be over long before the Resolute arrived. Everything now depended on Wei's Raptors and the Alarans' desperate gambit with their quantum bridge. "Major Saris," Hale said, turning to his XO. "Prepare a strike team for immediate deployment the moment we reach the station. If there are still Raiders aboard when we arrive, I want them neutralized quickly and efficiently." "Yes, sir," Saris acknowledged. "Rules of engagement?" "Protect the Olaran personnel and secure the quantum bridge technology." Hale replied without hesitation. "Use whatever force is necessary against the Raiders, but minimal collateral damage to the station itself." As Saris moved to prepare the strike team, Hale returned his attention to the tactical display. The Resolute and its escort fleet continued their approach at maximum velocity, but the outcome of this confrontation would likely be determined before they arrived. "Open a direct channel to Dr. Voss on the research station," he ordered. "If they're going to attempt another quantum pulse, I want to coordinate our response." On the Terralon research station, chaos reigned as the Raider boarding parties fought their way through the corridors, overwhelming the limited security personnel who stood in their path. The Olaran defenders, though courageous, were simply not equipped for this kind of combat. In the central laboratory, Dr. Erin Voss worked frantically to reconfigure the quantum bridge, her long fingers dancing across the control interfaces with practiced precision. Around her, her team fortified the laboratory entrances and prepared for the possibility that the Raiders would breach their final defenses before the modified pulse could be initiated. "Raiders have reached Section 8, reported Trell, his skin patterns displaying urgent alarm. "That's 2 sections away from our position. Security teams are falling back to the final defensive line." First Minister Rella, who had remained in the laboratory despite the increasing danger, approached Aaron with visible concern. "Time is running out, Doctor. The pulse?" "Nearly ready," Aaron replied without looking up from her work. "The reconfiguration is complex. We're essentially reprogramming an ancient device to perform a function it was never designed for, under extreme time pressure." "5 minutes, Doctor," Rella reminded her. "That was our agreement." Before Aaron could respond, a communication alert sounded from the console. "Incoming transmission from the human vessel Resolute," announced a technician. "Put it through," Rella ordered. Colonel Hale's face appeared on the display, his expression one of focused determination. "Dr. Voss, First Minister, I understand you're preparing another quantum pulse. My scout ships have reported your situation is critical." "Raiders have breached our outer defenses," Rella confirmed. "They're moving toward the laboratory where the quantum bridge is housed. Our security forces cannot hold them off much longer. Lieutenant Commander Wei is bringing her Raptor to your station to provide direct support," Hale informed them. "But the Resolute is still approximately 40 minutes from your position. Whatever you're planning with this second pulse, it needs to buy you enough time to hold out until we arrive." Aaron moved into view of the communication display. "Colonel, the modified pulse will be focused within the station itself, targeting the Raider boarding parties. But I must warn you, the effects on our own systems will be severe. We'll likely lose all power and communications for an indeterminate period." "Understood, Doctor. My strike teams will be prepared to board and secure the station the moment we arrive. But I need to know, can your people hold out for 40 minutes after the pulse, potentially without power or internal communications?" It was a question Aaron had been avoiding in her own mind. The station relied on its environmental systems to maintain life support. A complete power failure, lasting too long. "We have emergency oxygen reserves distributed throughout the station," she said finally. "And our central core sections have independent backup systems that might survive the pulse. It will be difficult. But yes, I believe we can hold out." Hale nodded. "Good. Lieutenant Commander Wei should reach your position within minutes. I suggest you coordinate with her for the defense of your laboratory until the pulse can be initiated." "Colonel," Rella interjected, "I feel I should inform you that the Council has authorized Protocol Omega, the destruction of the quantum bridge, if we cannot prevent its capture by the Raiders. Dr. Voss's modified pulse is our final alternative to that outcome." Hale's expression remained unchanged, but Aaron thought she detected a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "I understand. First Minister, all the more reason for this pulse to succeed. Resolute out." As the communication ended, another explosion rocked the laboratory, this one close enough to send vibrations through the floor beneath them. "Section 9 breached," Trell announced grimly. "Raiders will reach our position in approximately 7 minutes, at their current pace." Aaron turned to Marin, who was completing the final adjustments to the bridge. "Status?" "Reconfiguration complete," the engineer reported. "The bridge is ready for the localized pulse. But, Doctor," he hesitated, "the power levels are barely adequate. There's a significant probability of system failure during the emission." "System failure or complete success? Those are our only options now," Aaron replied, her skin patterns reflecting resolute determination. "Prepare for pulse emission on my command." As her team moved to final positions, Aaron received another communication alert, this one from Lieutenant Commander Wei of Raptor 1, which had just docked at an emergency airlock near the laboratory section. "Dr. Voss, this is Wei. My team is entering the station now. We'll move to intercept the Raiders before they reach your position. Hold your pulse until we're in place. We can funnel them into a crossfire." Aaron exchanged glances with Trell, who nodded his agreement with the human commander's strategy. "Understood, Commander. We'll await your signal. But please hurry. The Raiders are very close." "Moving fast," Wei assured her. "Way out." As the communication ended, Aaron turned back to the quantum bridge, which now hummed with a different tone than before, higher pitched, almost strained, as if the ancient device was protesting its misuse. She could only hope that it would perform this one last function before either succeeding in its purpose or failing catastrophically. Either way, the next few minutes would determine the fate of the Terralon research station and everyone aboard it. Captain Vrex moved with his elite warriors through the corridors of the Olaran research station, his predatory instincts fully engaged. The soft-skinned scientist had put up more resistance than expected, but it was crumbling now, as all resistance eventually did before the Krelax raiders. "The energy signature is strongest in this direction," reported his sensor specialist, indicating a sealed doorway ahead. "Whatever sent that pulse is behind these doors." Vrex bared his teeth in anticipation. Despite the setbacks, the disabling pulse, the interference from the human scouts, victory was within reach. Once he possessed the technology that could send signals across vast distances and disable entire fleets, the fortunes of the Krelax raiders would be transformed. No longer mere pirates, they would become a power to be reckoned with across multiple sectors. "Prepare breaching charges," he ordered. He was interrupted by weapons fire from behind. Precise, powerful energy blasts that dropped two of his warriors before they could react. Spinning around, Vrex saw a squad of figures in sleek combat armor advancing down the corridor. Humans, moving with the disciplined precision of trained soldiers. "Take cover," he snarled to his remaining warriors, ducking behind a structural support as more energy blasts filled the corridor. The humans had reached the station faster than anticipated. No matter. His boarding teams were spread throughout the structure, and his warriors were experienced fighters. They would deal with these interlopers and then continue their mission. "Hold them here," he ordered a subset of his warriors. "The rest of you, with me. We breach the laboratory now." As his designated rearguard engaged the humans in a fierce firefight, Vrex and his remaining warriors placed breaching charges on the laboratory doors. Whatever awaited within, the prize and perhaps resistance, would soon be theirs to overcome. Lieutenant Commander Wei led her combat team through the station corridors with focused intensity. Her enhanced combat armor, providing both protection and tactical information via its heads-up display. They had encountered resistance almost immediately upon entering the station, raiders moving toward the central laboratory, where the quantum bridge was housed. "Contact front," warned her point man as energy blasts erupted from around a corner ahead. Wei's team responded with practiced efficiency, taking cover and returning fire with precision. These weren't the undisciplined pirates she had initially expected. The raiders moved with coordination and used proper combat tactics. Veterans, then, not amateurs. "Trask, Gordon, flank left," she ordered two of her team. "We'll provide covering fire. Move on my mark." As her team engaged the raiders in a coordinated assault, Wei checked the station schematic displayed in her helmet. They were still 2 sections away from the laboratory, and sensor readings indicated another group of raiders already at the laboratory entrance. "Dr. Voss," she called over the comm. "Raiders are at your position. We're engaged with a second group and cannot reach you immediately. Initiate your pulse as soon as possible." "Understood, Commander," came the Olaran scientist's voice, steady despite the evident stress of her situation. "Preparing for a mission now." We turned to her team. "Everyone, prepare for quantum shielding protocols. When I give the word, activate all protective measures. That pulse is going to hit hard." As her team acknowledged the order and continued their firefight with the raider group, Wei felt a moment of uncertainty. They were deep inside the station now, far from their raptor. If the pulse affected their equipment as severely as the first one had, but there was no alternative. The quantum bridge technology was too valuable and too dangerous to allow it to fall into raider hands. And the Olarans, for all their scientific brilliance, were not equipped to defend it without help. "Push forward," she ordered her team. "We need to reach that laboratory." In the central laboratory, Dr. Aaron Voss made the final adjustments to the quantum bridge as the sounds of combat reached them from just outside the sealed doors. The raiders had arrived, and they were attempting to breach the laboratory's defenses. "Breaching charges detected on the main entrance," reported Trell, his weapon drawn as he stood with the few security personnel who remained to defend the bridge. "Structural integrity failing." First Minister Rella moved to Aaron's side, her skin patterns now showing a calm resignation. "It's time, Doctor. Initiate the pulse." Aaron nodded, her own skin patterns reflecting determined focus. "All personnel, implement emergency protocols. Secure yourselves for total power loss and potential structural damage." As her team rushed to comply, sealing themselves in protective stations around the laboratory, Aaron opened a final communication channel. "Lieutenant Commander Wei, we are initiating the pulse now. The raiders are breaching our laboratory. Take whatever protective measures you can." "Acknowledged, Doctor," came Wei's reply. "Good luck." Aaron turned to the bridge, which now rotated with an uneven, almost stuttering motion, as if struggling to perform the function they had forced upon it. Its glow had intensified to a painful brightness, concentrated now into a tightly focused beam, rather than the omnidirectional pulse of its first emission. "Pulse emission in 3, 2, 1. She activated the final sequence just as the laboratory doors began to give way under the raiders' breaching charges. For a brief, eternal moment, nothing happened. The bridge continued its uneven rotation, its glow unchanged. Then, with a sound unlike anything Aaron had ever heard, a high, keening wail that seemed to exist simultaneously in and out of normal space-time, the bridge emitted a concentrated pulse of quantum energy that lanced outward in all directions within the confines of the station. The laboratory lights died instantly. Emergency systems, which had barely recovered from the first pulse, failed completely. Darkness enveloped them, broken only by the fading glow of the bridge itself, which had slowed almost to a stop, its light dimming to a faint blue flicker. In the sudden silence that followed, Aaron could hear nothing but the sound of her own breathing. The attack on the doors had stopped. The raiders, it seemed, had been caught in the pulse's effect. But so had every system in the laboratory, and presumably throughout the station. They were now in darkness, with no communications, no sensors, no way to know what was happening beyond their immediate vicinity. All they could do was wait for their systems to recover, wait for the human fleet to arrive, wait to discover whether their desperate gamble had succeeded or failed. Colonel Hale observed the sudden cessation of all signals from the Terralon research station with grim understanding. The Alarans had initiated their second quantum pulse, as planned. Now the station was dark, environmentally, electronically, and in terms of communications. "No contact with Lieutenant Commander Wei or her team," reported Lieutenant Chen from the communications station. "All signals from the station are offline." "Expected, given the nature of the pulse," Hale noted. "Time to intercept?" 34 minutes, sir." "Continue maximum burn. I want strike teams ready for immediate deployment the moment we enter effective range. Priority objectives: secure the quantum bridge and locate our personnel." As his crew acknowledged the orders, Hale studied the tactical display, which now showed only the fading signatures of the raider fleet, still recovering from the first pulse, and now, presumably, affected by the second as well. The Olarans had bought themselves time with their desperate measures, but at a significant cost. Their station was now effectively dead in space, its life support systems likely operating on minimal emergency power at best. 34 minutes. Hale could only hope it would be soon enough. In the darkness of the central laboratory, Aaron had managed to activate a small emergency light, a personal device that had been shielded from the pulse effects. Its feeble glow revealed the shapes of her team, emerging from their protective stations to assess their situation. "Status?" she called softly. "All laboratory personnel accounted for," reported Marin, his voice tense but controlled. No immediate injuries. The bridge? Inactive but intact. Power levels minimal. Aaron moved carefully to the laboratory doors, where Trell and his security team were examining the partially breached entrance. The raiders? No movement or sound from outside, Trell replied. The pulse appears to have disabled them, at least temporarily, but our defenses are compromised. If they recover before we can restore power. He didn't need to complete the thought. Without functioning systems, they had no way to secure the laboratory against a determined assault. First Minister Rella joined them at the doors, her tall form barely visible in the dim light. How long until emergency systems recover? Impossible to say, Aaron admitted. The focused pulse was more intense than the first one, though confined to the station itself. Hours, perhaps, rather than minutes. We don't have hours, Trell pointed out grimly. The raiders will recover long before that. And without communications, we have no way to coordinate with the human fleet when they arrive. Aaron considered their options, limited as they were. We need to secure this position as best we can with what we have, and we need to be ready to move the bridge if necessary. Move it, Rella sounded shocked. The bridge is integrated with the laboratory systems. Its core components are self-contained, Aaron explained. In an emergency, we could disconnect it from its power matrix and transport it. Not ideal, certainly, but preferable to allowing it to fall into raider hands. As her team began improvising barricades at the damaged entrance, using laboratory furniture and equipment, Aaron returned to the bridge, studying its now quiescent form in the dim emergency light. The ancient device had performed far beyond its design parameters, had perhaps saved them all, at least temporarily. But at what cost to the technology itself? And more importantly, what would happen when the raiders recovered and renewed their assault? Or when the human fleet arrived with their own interest in the bridge and its capabilities? The immediate crisis might have been averted, but Aaron suspected their troubles were far from over. Lieutenant Commander Wei regained consciousness slowly, her head pounding with a pain that suggested she'd been thrown against a bulkhead when the pulse hit. Around her, in the dim glow of emergency lighting, she could see her team beginning to stir as well. Sound off, she managed, pushing herself to a sitting position. Who's functional? One by one, her team members responded, all alive but many nursing injuries from the pulse's effects. Their position in the corridor had left them exposed. Unlike the Olarans, who had been in protected stations within the laboratory. Weapons and comm status? Wei asked, as she checked her own equipment. Weapons operational. Basic functions only, reported her second-in-command. Communications dead. Suit systems at minimal capacity. Wei nodded, having expected as much. The pulse had been designed to target electronic systems, and while their combat armor provided some protection, they hadn't been fully shielded. The raiders? She asked, looking toward where the enemy had been positioned before the pulse hit. No movement yet. They appear to be down, same as we were. Wei made a quick decision. We moved to the laboratory. That's where the bridge is, and that's where the raiders were focusing their efforts. If we can link up with the Olaran security team, we might be able to hold that position until the Resolute arrives. As her team gathered their equipment and formed up, Wei considered their situation. They were cut off from communication with both the Resolute and their Raptor. They had no way of knowing exactly when reinforcements would arrive, or what condition the Olaran laboratory was in. But their mission remained clear: protect the quantum bridge technology and prevent its capture by the raiders. Move out, she ordered, and stay alert. Just because we don't see movement doesn't mean all the raiders are still down. As her team advanced cautiously through the darkened corridors, Wei reflected on the strange alliance that had formed in the crucible of this crisis. Humans and Olarans, united against a common threat. It wasn't the first contact scenario anyone had anticipated, but it might prove to be a significant moment in the relationship between their species. assuming, of course, that they all survived the next few hours. Captain Vrex awakened to darkness and pain, his predator's senses immediately alert despite the disorientation. The Alaran weapon had struck again, more powerfully this time, focused within the station itself. His warriors lay around him, some still unconscious, others beginning to stir. "Status," he hissed to those who were awake. "Weapons functional. Basic systems only," reported one warrior. "Communications with the fleet dead." Vrex snarled in frustration. The Alarans had proven more resourceful than anticipated, and the humans, always the humans, had interfered at the critical moment. But the game was not yet over. They were still within striking distance of their prize. The laboratory doors had been partially breached before the pulse hit. And while the pulse had incapacitated his warriors temporarily, it had likely affected the Alarans as well. "Gather those who can fight," he ordered quietly. "We continue the mission." "Captain," objected his second-in-command, "our numbers are reduced, our equipment compromised. Perhaps we should withdraw, regroup with the fleet." Vrex silenced him with a slashing gesture. "The prize is within reach, and our fleet is likely still recovering from the earlier pulse. No. We press forward. The Alarans are scientists, not warriors. Even in our reduced state, we outmatch them." As his warriors prepared to renew their assault on the laboratory, Vrex considered the humans, the real threat in this equation. The combat team they had encountered was professional, disciplined, but they too would have been affected by the pulse. The question was whether they had recovered as quickly as the Krelax. Only one way to find out. "Forward," he ordered. "The prize awaits." The minutes stretched into an eternity for Dr. Erin Voss as she and her team maintained their vigil in the darkened laboratory. They had constructed makeshift barricades at the damaged entrance, but their defenses were minimal at best. Without functioning systems, they were reliant entirely on their own resources and ingenuity. "Movement in the corridor," whispered Trell suddenly, his keen hearing picking up sounds beyond their position. "Multiple individuals approaching?" Aaron felt a chill of fear. Had the raiders recovered so quickly? Were they about to face a renewed assault with no way to defend themselves? Trell and his security personnel took up positions behind their barricades. Primitive projectile weapons at the ready, a last resort defense that required no electronic components to function. "Hold fire until we confirm hostiles," Trell ordered quietly. "Could be station personnel, or the humans." The tension in the laboratory was palpable as the sounds grew closer. Then, a voice called out from beyond the damaged doors, a human voice. "Dr. Voss, this is Lieutenant Commander Wei. My team is approaching your position. We're friendly. Do not fire." Relief flooded through Erin, her skin patterns brightening noticeably, even in the dim light. "Commander Wei, we're here. The entrance is partially breached, but still defensible." Moments later, Wei and her combat team appeared at the damaged doors, their armor marked with signs of combat, but their weapons ready. They moved with practiced efficiency to assess the laboratory's defenses and integrate with the Alaran security team. "Situation report?" Wei asked, as she approached Aaron and First Minister Rella. "The bridge is secure but inactive," Aaron replied. "All station systems are down. Communications, sensors, most life support. We're operating on emergency reserves only." "Raiders?" "No contact since the pulse," Trell reported. "But we've detected movement in the surrounding corridors within the last few minutes." Wei nodded grimly. "They're regrouping, same as we are. My team encountered no resistance on our way here, but that won't last. They'll be back and in force." "Can we contact your vessel?" Rella asked. "The Resolute?" Wei shook her head. "All communications are down. We're on our own until the main fleet arrives." She checked a device on her wrist, some kind of chronometer that had apparently survived the pulse effects. "Based on their last reported position and velocity, they should reach us in approximately 25 minutes. "Can we hold that long?" Aaron asked, looking at the makeshift barricades and the limited number of defenders they had available. "We have to," Wei replied simply. "The bridge cannot fall into Raider hands." As if in response to her words, sounds of movement from the corridor outside intensified. Trell and his security team tensed, raising their weapons. "They're coming," the security chief announced quietly. Wei immediately took charge of the defense, positioning her combat team to supplement the Alaran security personnel at the critical points of their perimeter. "Conserve ammunition," she advised. "Make every shot count, and be ready to fall back to inner positions if the outer barricades are breached." As the defenders prepared for the coming assault, Aaron moved to the quantum bridge, studying it with both scientific curiosity and practical concern. The ancient device had saved them twice now, at great cost to itself. Its glow had dimmed to almost nothing. Its rotation slowed to a barely perceptible movement. Could it be used again, if necessary? Could they generate a third pulse? Unlikely, given its current state. But perhaps there was another way to use the bridge, not as a weapon this time, but as a means of communication, as it had originally been designed. An idea began to form in Aaron's mind. A desperate, possibly foolish idea. But in their current situation, with raiders closing in and help still distant, perhaps a foolish idea was better than no idea at all. "Marin," she called to her chief engineer, "I need your help with the bridge, immediately." Colonel Hale stood on the command bridge of the Resolute, watching as the tactical display updated with their approach to the Terralon research station. 23 minutes until they were in range. 23 minutes, during which Lieutenant Commander Wei and her team, along with the Alaran personnel, were on their own against the raiders. "Still no communication from the station?" he asked Lieutenant Chen. "Nothing, sir. The quantum pulse appears to have disabled all communication systems. We can't even detect normal power signatures from the station structure." Hale nodded grimly. The Alarans had taken a significant risk with their second pulse, essentially sacrificing their own systems to disable the raiders. A brave decision, but one that left them incredibly vulnerable if the raiders recovered quickly. "Major Saris," he called to his XO. "Status of the strike teams?" "Ready for immediate deployment, sir. 4 full squads. Heavy weapons authorized. Non-lethal options available for Alaran personnel if necessary." The qualification was standard procedure, but reflected an uncomfortable reality. They still didn't know exactly what they would find when they reached the station. The Alarans might view the survival fleet as potential allies against the raiders, or as another threat to their quantum bridge technology. Hale preferred the former, but was prepared for the latter. The bridge technology was simply too significant to allow it to fall into unreliable hands. If the Alarans proved unwilling to cooperate, he pushed the thought aside. One crisis at a time. First, they needed to reach the station and deal with the raiders. Then, they could address the diplomatic complexities of the situation. "Sir," called the sensor operator suddenly, "I'm detecting an unusual energy signature from the direction of the research station." Hale moved quickly to the sensor station. "What kind of signature?" "It's similar to the quantum pulse that reached us initially, but much weaker, more focused, and it appears to be directional, aimed specifically at our position." Hale frowned. "A third pulse? I thought the Olaran's device was depleted after the second emission." "This is different, sir. It's not a pulse, more like a beam, a tightly focused quantum transmission." "A communication attempt," Hale realized. "They're trying to contact us using the bridge itself. If so, sir, our standard communication systems aren't equipped to receive or decode it," Lieutenant Chen pointed out. Hale considered this for a moment, then made a decision. "Reconfigure our quantum entanglement array to scan for patterns in the transmission. If the Alarans are trying to send us a message, I want to know what it is." As his crew rushed to comply, Hale returned his attention to the tactical display. 20 minutes to intercept. If the Olarans were desperate enough to risk using their already depleted bridge technology to attempt communication, the situation at the station must be dire indeed. Time was running out. The assault came suddenly, and from multiple directions. Raiders breaching not just the damaged main entrance to the laboratory, but also a secondary access point that had been thought secure. The defenders responded with disciplined fire. Wei's combat team providing the backbone of their resistance, while Trell's security personnel supported with their limited weapons. "They're probing our defenses," Wei called to Trell as they repelled the first wave. "Testing our strength and response patterns. The main assault will come next." Trell nodded his understanding, his skin patterns displaying grim determination. "My people will hold the secondary entrance. Your team has better weaponry for the main breach point." As the defenders repositioned according to this plan, First Minister Rella moved among the non-combat personnel, organizing them into support roles, tending to the wounded, preparing improvised weapons, maintaining the barricades. Despite her political position, she showed remarkable calm under pressure. At the center of the laboratory, Dr. Aaron Voss and Marin Tal worked feverishly on the quantum bridge, reconfiguring it yet again for a purpose that few understood. They had disconnected it from its main power matrix, rerouting what little emergency power remained directly into the core components of the device. "Will it work?" Wei asked during a brief lull in the fighting, approaching Aaron's position. "In theory," the Olaran scientist replied, not looking up from her work. "The bridge was designed primarily for communication, not as a weapon. We're attempting to return it to something closer to its original function, sending a focused, directional quantum signal directly to your approaching fleet." "What kind of signal?" "Information. Our status. The raiders' positions. The condition of the bridge itself. Everything your Colonel Hale will need to mount an effective response when he arrives." Wei nodded, impressed despite the dire circumstances. "Clever. But will the bridge have enough power for such a transmission?" It seemed pretty depleted after that second pulse. "We're bypassing most of the standard protocols," Marin explained, "focusing all remaining energy into a single, brief transmission. It will likely burn out several key components. But the information is worth the sacrifice," Aaron finished. "If your fleet knows exactly what they're flying into, they can respond much more effectively." Another exchange of fire at the main entrance interrupted their conversation, raiders pressing their advantage with increasing coordination. Wei moved back to the defensive line, organizing her team's response with practiced efficiency. "They're massing for a major push," she called to Trell. "All defenders, prepare for sustained assault." As the fighting intensified, Aaron made the final adjustments to the bridge. The ancient device now emitted a thin, focused beam of quantum energy, barely visible even in the dim light of the laboratory, but directed with precise calculation toward the approaching human fleet. "Transmission initiated," she announced. "Now we just have to hope they can receive and decode it. And, though she didn't say it aloud, hope that they could hold out until help arrived." The raiders were growing bolder, their attacks more coordinated. The defenders were skilled and determined, but ammunition was limited, and fatigue was beginning to take its toll. Time was running out. Captain Vrex observed the laboratory defenses from a concealed position, analyzing the humans' defensive patterns with a predator's patience. The initial probing attacks had confirmed what he suspected. The humans were the primary threat, their combat training and superior weapons making them the backbone of the defense. "Target the humans first," he instructed his warriors. "Concentrate fire on their positions. Once they're eliminated, the Olarans will fall quickly." As his warriors prepared for the main assault, Vrex studied the activity at the center of the laboratory, visible through the partially breached entrance. The Olarans were doing something with the device, the prize he had come to claim. Something that involved a thin beam of energy directed outward, away from the station. "A communication attempt? Likely. The approaching human fleet was still their best hope for rescue. "We move now," Vrex decided. "Full assault, all remaining warriors. The prize must be secured before the human fleet arrives." His warriors moved into position, weapons ready. The final confrontation was at hand. On the Resolute, the science team worked frantically to decode the quantum transmission from the research station. The signal was weak, fluctuating, but definitely artificial, and definitely directed specifically at them. "We're getting something," announced the lead scientist. "Data packets, highly compressed. It's station schematics, personnel positions, tactical information." Colonel Hale moved to the science station, studying the incoming data with keen interest. "The Olarans are giving us everything we need for a precision strike. Remarkable." As the data continued to flow, a more complex transmission began to emerge. Technical specifications and operational principles of the quantum bridge itself. Hale's eyebrows rose as he absorbed the implications. "They're sharing the technology with us," he realized aloud. "Not just tactical data for the immediate situation, but the underlying science of the bridge." "Sir," called Lieutenant Chen from communications, "I'm detecting a coded message embedded in the transmission. It appears to be addressed specifically to you." "Put it through," Hale ordered. The message was text only, displayed on his personal command interface. "Colonel Hale. Raiders concentrated at laboratory entrances. Lit. Commander Wei and team defending primary access point. Bridge technology too valuable to risk capture. Sharing all data with you now in case we cannot hold. Suggest immediate strike on raider positions upon arrival. Bridge components can be salvaged, even if station is lost. Dr. Aaron Voss." Hale read the message twice, noting both its pragmatic tactical information and its unstated implications. The Olaran scientist was sharing their most valuable technology and providing tactical guidance to a military force they had only just met. A remarkable leap of trust under the circumstances. "Time to intercept?" he asked the navigation officer. 13 minutes, sir." "Too long," Hale murmured. Then, more loudly, "Major Saris, revise the strike plan based on this new data. I want precision targeting of all raider positions the moment we're in range. Priority is the laboratory section. Our people and the bridge technology must be secured immediately." As his crew rushed to update their approach plan, Hale studied the station schematics the Olarans had provided. The situation was precarious. Raiders concentrated around the laboratory. Wei's team and the Olaran defenders outnumbered and likely running low on resources. But the detailed information gave them a fighting chance to turn the tide quickly upon arrival. "Push the engines beyond safety parameters," he ordered the engineering team. "I want us there in 10 minutes, not 13. As the Resolute's massive engines roared with renewed power, accelerating the fleet to dangerous velocities. Hale returned his attention to the tactical display. The Olarans had placed their trust in the survival fleet. He would not let that trust be misplaced. The main assault came with a ferocity that tested even Lieutenant Commander Wei's combat experience. Raiders breached the barricades at multiple points simultaneously, forcing the defenders to fall back to inner positions. The fighting was intense, close quarters, the kind of combat where training and discipline made the difference between life and death. "Conserve ammunition!" Wei called to her team as they held a defensive line around the central platform where the quantum bridge still emitted its thin beam of communication. "Make every shot count!" Beside her, Trell and his security team fought with surprising effectiveness, despite their limited combat training. The Olarans might be scientists first, but they were defending their home, their research, their very lives. Such motivation could make warriors of even the most peaceful beings. At the bridge platform, Dr. Aaron Voss monitored the transmission while preparing for the worst-case scenario. She and Marin had already disconnected the core components of the bridge from their mounting, ready to move them if the laboratory was overrun. "Transmission at 87% completion," Marin reported, his skin patterns showing both tension and determination. The bridge is holding, but power levels are critical. Keep it stable as long as possible, Aaron instructed. Every bit of data we can send increases our chances. A sudden surge in the fighting drew her attention to the main entrance, where raiders had pushed through to a new position, forcing Wei's team to adjust their defense. The human commander was a marvel of combat efficiency, directing her people with hand signals and terse commands that kept the raiders at bay despite their superior numbers. But it couldn't last. The defenders were being pushed back steadily, their perimeter shrinking. Soon, they would be forced to their final defensive position, the bridge platform itself. First Minister Rella appeared at Aaron's side. Her tall form stooped slightly from fatigue, but her eyes clear and focused. "Doctor, we must consider Protocol Omega. If the raiders breach the final defensive line—" "Not yet," Aaron interrupted firmly. "The transmission is still active, and help is coming." She paused, then added more softly, "But yes, I understand. If it becomes necessary—" Rella nodded, accepting this compromise. They both knew what was at stake, not just their lives, but the potential consequences of allowing the bridge technology to fall into raider hands. A new wave of assault pushed the defenders back further, raiders now visible within the laboratory itself, moving from cover to cover as they pressed their advantage. Wei and her team responded with precise, devastating fire, dropping several attackers. But the pressure was relentless. "Final defensive position," Wei called, organizing a fighting retreat to the bridge platform. "Form a perimeter, protect the scientists and the bridge." As the defenders consolidated around the platform, Aaron checked the transmission status one last time. 93% complete. Almost there. If they could hold just a little longer. And then she saw him. A raider different from the others. Larger, more commanding. A leader, directing the assault with calculated precision. His eyes met hers across the laboratory, and Aaron felt a chill of recognition. This was no mere opportunist. This was a predator who had come specifically for the bridge, who understood its value, who would not stop until he claimed it. "Captain Vrex," one of the raiders called to the leader, "the humans are falling back to the central platform." Vrex's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Surround the platform. Prepare for the final push. The prize is within reach." Colonel Hale stood at the command console as the Resolute and its escort fleet approached the Terralon research station at dangerous velocity. Their engines pushed well beyond safety parameters. The tactical display showed the station in detail now. The raider fleet still scattered and largely disabled around it, and the concentrated heat signatures of combat within the central laboratory section. 5 minutes to optimal firing range, reported the weapons officer. "Prep all precision weapons," Hale ordered. "I want targeted strikes on raider positions only. Minimal collateral damage to the station structure." "Sir," called Lieutenant Chen from communications. "The quantum transmission from the station has ceased." Hale frowned. Had the bridge failed? Or worse, had the laboratory been overrun? "Understood. Maintain our approach. Major Saris, have the strike teams ready for immediate deployment the moment we're in range. Primary objective remains securing the laboratory and the bridge technology." As the Resolute closed the final distance to the station, Hale studied the tactical display with growing concern. The heat signatures within the laboratory suggested intense fighting, concentrated around a central position. Likely, the bridge platform itself. The defenders were making their last stand. "Push the engines further," he ordered. "Get us there now." In the laboratory, the final confrontation had begun. The defenders, now reduced to a tight perimeter around the bridge platform, fought with desperate determination against the encircling raiders. Wei and her combat team formed the backbone of the defense, their superior weapons and training keeping the attackers at bay, while Trell and his security personnel protected the flanks. At the center, Dr. Aaron Voss and her team had ceased the transmission. the bridge now dark and silent, its power exhausted. They had done all they could to share their knowledge with the approaching human fleet. Now survival was the only priority. "They're massing for a final push," Wei warned, her voice tense but controlled. "All defenders, prepare for close-quarters combat." Erin checked the small device in her hand. The emergency destruct mechanism for the bridge core components. Protocol Omega. A last resort that now seemed increasingly likely to be necessary. First Minister Rella stood beside her, watching the unfolding battle with grim determination. "The Council's authorization stands. Doctor, if the perimeter is breached—" "I understand," Erin replied quietly. She glanced at the bridge one last time, the ancient device that had been both their salvation and their greatest vulnerability. So much knowledge, so much potential. To destroy it would be a scientific tragedy, but to allow it to fall into the hands of someone like Captain Vrex would be far worse. The raiders began their final assault, a coordinated attack from multiple directions that tested the defenders' perimeter to its limits. Wei's combat team responded with disciplined fire, dropping several attackers, but they were running low on ammunition, and the raiders seemed to have an endless supply of warriors. "Hold the line," Wei called, repositioning her team to counter the main thrust of the attack. "Reinforcements are coming." But even as she spoke, a new threat emerged. Captain Vrex himself, leading a group of elite warriors in a focused assault on the weakest point of the perimeter. They moved with predatory precision, using covering fire and coordinated tactics to push through the defensive line. Trell and his security team attempted to respond, but they were outmatched. The raiders broke through, entering the inner perimeter, closing on the bridge platform itself. Wei redirected her remaining combat team to counter this new threat, engaging Vrex and his warriors in fierce close-quarters fighting. But the human commander was running out of options, her team's ammunition nearly exhausted, their position increasingly untenable. Erin looked to Rella, who nodded once, a silent authorization. It was time. With a heavy heart, Erin prepared to activate the destruct mechanism. And then, without warning, the entire laboratory shook with a precise, powerful impact. Not from within, but from outside. A targeted strike that collapsed a section of ceiling directly onto a concentration of raiders, eliminating them instantly. More impacts followed, each precisely targeted to hit raider positions while avoiding the defenders. Through the hole in the ceiling, Erin could see the unmistakable silhouette of a massive warship. The Resolute had arrived. "Reinforcements!" Wei called, her voice filled with new energy. "Hold your positions! Help is here!" The tide of battle shifted instantly. The raiders, suddenly under attack from above as well as from the defenders, began to fall back in disarray. Captain Vrex, however, was not so easily deterred. He pressed his attack on the bridge platform, his elite warriors engaging Wei's team in desperate combat. "The prize!" he hissed, his predatory eyes fixed on the bridge components. "It will be mine!" Wei met his charge personally, her combat training matching his predatory instincts in a fierce duel. But Vrex was powerful, driven by an obsession that gave him strength beyond his already formidable abilities. He broke past Wei, lunging toward the bridge platform where Erin stood with the destruct mechanism. In that moment, with the raider captain closing on her position, Erin made her decision. She raised the device, prepared to activate it. A precision shot from above struck Vrex, staggering him. Through the ceiling breach, combat-armored figures descended on rappelling lines, the Resolute strike team, arriving with perfect timing and positioning. The raiders, caught between the defenders and the new arrivals, began to surrender or flee. Vrex, wounded but still dangerous, snarled in defiance as he was surrounded by human soldiers, their weapons trained on his vital points. "Captain Vrex of the Krellax Raiders," announced the strike team leader. "You are hereby detained under the authority of the survival fleet. Surrender your weapons immediately." For a moment, It seemed Vrex might choose death over capture. But the predator in him recognized when the hunt was truly over. With a final, hateful glance at the bridge platform, at the prize that had been within his grasp, he dropped his weapons. The battle for the Terralon research station was over. The aftermath of conflict brought its own kind of chaos, organized, purposeful, but still overwhelming in its intensity. Human medical teams treated the wounded, both their own and the Olarans. Security details secured the captured raiders. Engineering teams began restoring power to critical station systems. In the central laboratory, now illuminated by portable lights brought by the human strike teams, Dr. Erin Voss found herself in an impromptu conference with Colonel Marcus Hale, who had arrived on the station shortly after his strike teams secured the laboratory. "Your transmission saved many lives, Doctor," Hale was saying, his tone respectful. "The tactical data allowed us to target our initial strikes with precision, and the technical information about the bridge—" He paused, studying the now dormant device. "Remarkable technology, which we nearly destroyed," Aaron admitted, glancing at the destruct mechanism that had been set aside but not discarded. "Protocol Omega was seconds from implementation when your strike team arrived." "A difficult but understandable decision," Hale acknowledged. "Such technology in Raider hands would have had devastating consequences across multiple sectors." First Minister Rella, who had been speaking with Major Saris nearby, joined their conversation. "The Council will want to express its formal gratitude for your intervention, Colonel. Without the survival fleet's response, this station and the bridge would have been lost." "We responded to a distress call," Hale said simply, "as any civilized force would." Aaron noted the careful diplomacy in his words. The humans had indeed responded to a call for help, but they had also recognized immediately the strategic significance of the bridge technology. Their assistance had not been entirely altruistic. "Nevertheless," Rella continued, "this incident has made clear certain vulnerabilities in our approach to security. The Olaran Alliance has perhaps relied too heavily on diplomatic solutions and not enough on practical defensive measures. A balance can be found," Hale suggested. "The survival fleet has considerable experience in security protocols that don't compromise scientific or cultural values." Aaron recognized the opening for what it was, the beginning of a potential alliance, or at least a cooperative relationship, between the Olaran Alliance and the humans' survival fleet. An unexpected outcome of their accidental summons, but perhaps not an unwelcome one. "The bridge itself will require extensive study and repair," she said, returning the conversation to the technology at the heart of the crisis. "The damage from our improvisations is significant, but the core principles remain valid. With proper development, it could revolutionize interstellar communication and connection. And potentially other applications as well," Hale observed carefully. Aaron met his gaze directly. "Yes. As we've demonstrated, the quantum principles involved have defensive applications as well, though I would hope that wouldn't be their primary development path. Science and security need not be opposing forces, Doctor," Hale replied. "At their best, they complement and strengthen each other." As their conversation continued, Lieutenant Commander Wei approached, her combat armor showing the marks of intense fighting, but her bearing as professional as ever. "Perimeter secured, sir," she reported to Hale. "All raiders either in custody or confirmed neutralized. Station systems beginning to come back online with our engineering support." "Excellent work, Commander," Hale acknowledged. "Your defense of the laboratory was instrumental to the success of this operation." Wei nodded in acknowledgement, then turned to Aaron. "Dr. Voss, your quick thinking with the bridge saved us all. Not many scientists would have been able to adapt ancient technology under such pressure. Not many military personnel would have risked themselves to protect scientists and their research." Aaron returned with genuine appreciation, her skin patterns displaying respect, As the immediate crisis subsided and recovery operations continued, Erin found herself contemplating the unexpected consequences of their accidental summons. They had activated the quantum bridge hoping to establish a new form of communication, never imagining they would instead send a distress call that would bring a military fleet to their doorstep. Yet, that apparent mistake had led to not only their salvation, but potentially a new alliance, a connection between civilizations that might never have occurred otherwise. The peaceful Olaran alliance and the battle-hardened humans of the survival fleet, finding common ground in the crucible of crisis. Perhaps the bridge had fulfilled its purpose after all, just not in the way anyone had anticipated. 3 weeks later, the Terralon research station hummed with renewed activity. The damage from the Raider assault had been largely repaired, systems restored to full functionality, and a new sense of purpose pervaded the scientific teams. In the central laboratory, now expanded and reinforced with additional security measures, Dr. Aaron Voss supervised the ongoing research into the quantum bridge. The device itself had been carefully reconstructed, its damaged components replaced or repaired with the help of both Olaran scientists and human technical specialists. Power levels stable at 60%, reported Marintal from a monitoring station. Quantum field integrity at nominal parameters. Aaron nodded in satisfaction. Prepare for the test transmission. Target coordinates locked on the Survival Fleet Headquarters station. As her team made the final preparations, Aaron became aware of a presence beside her, Colonel Marcus Hale, who had returned to the station for this demonstration after overseeing the implementation of new security protocols throughout the Terralon system. "Nervous, Doctor?" he asked, a hint of understanding in his voice. "Cautiously optimistic," Aaron replied, her skin patterns displaying the complex mixture of scientific excitement and pragmatic concern that had become her hallmark since the crisis. "We've made significant modifications to prevent another incident, but the principles remain revolutionary." "As does the potential," Hale observed. The relationship between the Olaran Alliance and the Survival Fleet had evolved rapidly in the weeks since the Raider assault. A formal cooperative agreement had been established, with humans providing security expertise and technology in exchange for access to Olaran scientific advancements, particularly the quantum bridge research. First Minister Rella joined them at the control console, her tall form now adorned with the subtle insignia that indicated her expanded role as liaison between the Alliance and the Survival Fleet. "The Council is monitoring this test with great interest, Doctor, as are our new allies." The subtle emphasis on the word allies was not lost on Aaron. The crisis had transformed the Olaran approach to interstellar relations, making them recognize the value of military partnerships alongside their traditional scientific and cultural exchanges. "Beginning transmission sequence," Aaron announced, activating the final protocols. The bridge began to rotate slowly, its crystalline components glowing with a now familiar blue light. But unlike before, the rotation remained steady, controlled, the power carefully regulated by the new systems developed jointly by Olaran and human engineers. A beam of concentrated quantum energy emerged from the bridge, invisible to the naked eye, but registered clearly on the monitoring equipment. It shot outward, directed precisely toward the distant Survival Fleet headquarters. "Transmission stable," reported Marin. "Quantum entanglement established. We have confirmation. The message was received at the target coordinates." A cheer went up from the assembled team, the first successful, controlled use of the quantum bridge for its intended purpose: instantaneous communication across vast distances of space. "This is just the beginning," Aaron said, turning to Hale and Rella. "With continued development, we could establish a network of bridge relays throughout known space, instantaneous communication between worlds, ships, stations, no more delays, no more isolation. And with the defensive applications we've demonstrated, such a network could serve as an early warning system as well," Hale added, a means of calling for help when needed, as you inadvertently did. From accidental summons to intentional connection, Rella observed. Perhaps that was the true purpose of the bridge all along. Not just communication, but connection, bringing together those who might otherwise never have found each other. As the successful test concluded and the team began analyzing the data, Aaron reflected on the strange path that had led them to this moment. Their accidental distress call had brought the fearsome Deathworlders to their doorstep. Humans, a species forged in hardship and conflict, with military might that had initially seemed threatening. Yet those same qualities had saved the station when diplomacy alone would have failed. And now, that accidental connection was blooming into something neither side could have anticipated. A partnership that combined the peaceful scientific brilliance of the Alarans with the protective strength and tactical wisdom of humanity. The quantum bridge had indeed created a connection, just not the one its designers had intended. But perhaps, Aaron thought as she watched the human and Olaran teams working seamlessly together, it was exactly the connection both civilizations had needed. Sometimes, the most valuable discoveries were the ones you never meant to make.